want to preface the conversation by saying that this is going to be a higher education focused session. So if you're from a K-12 institution, you may want to find yourself in another session relatively quickly. If you have questions about our K-12 integrations, please come by our booth later on, and we should be able to help you from there. So my name is Jeff Collins. I'm Director of Integration and Implementation Services at McGraw-Hill Education. And my team basically works with college and university administrators to help integrate and implement our learning platforms with learning management systems, in particular with Instructure Canvas. And with me today is John Francis, who's a part of our technical product leadership team, basically focused on integrations for our platforms as well. And please come by the booth later to see us, and we'll talk through anything that you might have or any questions that you might have. So today's agenda, we've got a couple things we want to cover. One, just a quick 2 or 3 minute overview of McGraw-Hill Education and how we think of ourselves today. And then also we're going to move on to then exploring our deep integration, our latest offering with Instructure Canvas. We're going to go through a little bit of how it works, kind of live walkthrough. And then we'll talk about how to get implementation and support and where to go next. Anybody have any questions so far? All right, well, questions along the way are acceptable. I kind of like to operate that way. Well, to start with, many of you are familiar with McGraw-Hill Education as a long-time textbook provider. As a matter of fact, everybody who comes up to the booth ask questions about textbooks and ebooks as the first thing that comes out of their mind. Well, I would say that as a company, though, I've been with the organization for a very long time. These days, we think of ourselves very much as a learning science company. And then you're going to ask yourself, well, what does that mean, learning science company? And what that really means is that when you go back into becoming a digital business, when you're starting to make that transition from print, see, the nice thing about print is that anybody can use it. You can give it to any student, any instructor, and they know how to open it up and start reading it. The implementation around that and the process of getting through it applies to pretty much all levels. But when you start getting into digital product, and you first start offering digital product, what you end up with is folks on the high end of that are influencing the direction of those products. And they're very discerning, and they've got very deep needs. And what you end up doing is you look at the mainstream audience that you have, and in many cases, you don't go back and you look at that student, and you look at the process by which they learn. And then you don't research that as well as you should. So we realized that very early on. And then we also realized that we had to start making investments in our entire ecosystem from beginning to end. We knew that we had to do that research for how learning occurs, when it occurs. And then we also had to start building the authoring tools that would support products that would be more individualized and more adaptive in nature. And then as a result of that, you end up with delivery systems that are just as sophisticated, and then a continuous feedback loop that goes back into product improvement. And when you develop that whole infrastructure, there's a lot of detail that goes into it, and there's a shift in your company and your organization. Everybody starts acting differently as well. It's a very digital first approach, but the focus on doing that research up front and having that drive your product and then having the results of what you're doing come back into the product is a very big deal to us. So as a learning science company, we've basically been working on this ecosystem for quite some time now. And basically it's to offer a seamless experience from beginning to end and to incorporate all of our company being into it, as well as everybody who uses our products. So basically what we have is we have research programs now that focus on the data that comes from the products, and then we develop methods based on that, and then we use the analytics that come from the use of the products, and then we build more tools to keep feeding the process. So right now we've got 3 core platforms that we focus on. We have our key program that basically supports all of our disciplines across the board, and that's accounting through zoology, and we call that Connect. And for higher education, many of you might be familiar with that, and Connect itself has a lot of components to it. There are ebook components to it. There are personalized and adaptive components to it. There are test bank components to it. And then there are very rich and robust types of formative assessment question items that can be used to create assignments. And then we have our ALEX program, which is focused mostly on mathematics, chemistry, and accounting. But mathematics, with Alex in particular, it's an artificial intelligence-driven program, which is also very personalized and adaptive, and its focus is entirely on the education of math. And then lastly, we have our SimNet program, which is for all the Microsoft skills and office automation sorts of things. And we offer deep levels of integration with each one of these things, and that's what we're here showcasing. So aside from our partnership with Instructure, we are basically here to talk about our integrations. Please stop by our booth, and we'll be going through that here. Now, when it comes to our integrations for the students, what we're looking at doing for the most part is embedding that learning experience back into your Instructure courses. If you think about it, though, we have a lot to do with the data on our end of things. So what we're really doing is creating sophisticated launch points back into those products, so when the student clicks on it, they do end up in our environment. We're collecting the data and the things that we need, but we are passing those results back in to Canvas so that you have them in both places. And then basically when we integrate our customers, at least I'm getting to the point where we're north of 50% in a lot of our integrations across the use of our platforms. We find that customer service turns out to be a lot better for both us and the institution. For the help desk, there's a lot less of those sort of upfront startup and registration problems and things that go on along the way. And then when we offer people a consistent and deep experience, we get out of their way. When they click on that link in Canvas and they end up taking that assignment directly and the results go back in, that's also a great thing for us. It saves a lot of steps and it creates a lot of efficiency for the instructors as well. So at the end of the day, your Canvas course is your source of truth. You launch over to us, you do your exercises and activity, data piles up there, it comes back there, but the student's always looking at Canvas for what they should be doing. Most important part. For the admins, we basically work with you to set up the tools to begin with, to implement them in. We basically we set up accounts for you, and we send you an XML that allows for an initial tool to be developed. And then basically what happens at that point is when your instructors come over, and I'm going to be showing this in a minute, they have to go through a pairing process their first time through. So they have to identify themselves, they have to have an account in Canvas, and they ultimately have an identity in our system as well, but they're married together. And then when they come over, we also ask them, this Canvas course that you're teaching, how does that relate to what's going on in our platform? So what sort of course or section does that line up to, so that the students are all put in one place, their data's all in one place, and the content is all the same. So the context is the same between those two systems. So it's an initial couple of steps. Once per user, period. It doesn't matter if it's an instructor or a student, it happens one time up front, and at that point we know who you are. And so whenever you launch across, now when it comes to the courses and sections, obviously that changes from term to term usually, unless it's a perpetual course of some kind, but normally every term they would come over and they would just say, identify the section that aligns up to their Canvas course. Okay. Well, what we do with the Canvas side of things, if they want the admin to do that or some instructional resources, as long as they can masquerade in Canvas, they can launch over and do the same thing. The reason why we keep those two things separate is that ultimately the data is going to flow back to the instructors' courses within Canvas, and they're going to want to see it in their grade books and things like that. So the people that are involved in the management of it, we want to use their identity to begin with, so at least everything is there in context for them. But administrators masquerade all the time and do that for certain types of institutions. All right. And so once we get this in place, though, where that pairing happens, this tool basically it launches into our Connect platform. And then when it launches into our Connect platform and people start to create assignments and exercises, we have a deployment tool. So any of those things can be selected and they could be pushed over to your assignment list in Canvas. From that point onward, you can organize them into your modules or your pages with their insertion tools like they normally have within the program. So well, we have a concept of that where you can share things out to people, but they still have to do their own pairing of things. So you can do that, and you can push that out to everybody. And then you're actually going to get to another point that we have that we're also going to be introducing at this show as well. So, but basically with this deployment tool, you're pushing it back into the assignment list, and depending on the sophistication of your audience, some instructors send students right to the assignment list and say, I just take them from there. That's how I got them organized. Some people embed them into modules and they have more of a workflow that they lay out. Some people create custom pages and they embed them in there. So either way, you can create the launch points to these things. And when you go in there as an instructor and that context comes over, you're of course coming into our platform in that sort of preview and edit mode where you have control over the assignment. You can see what students are taking it and what sort of reporting is needed and so on. If you're a student and you come over and you launch it though, you're actually taking the assignment. Does it make sense to everybody so far? We pick up the role and do that. Now, when it comes over to the assignment list, like I said, you can basically organize that any way that you want to with an assignments, and it creates a corresponding gradebook column. So in there, the results will flow over to the same column, and then any of the notifications you have that are associated to the assignments. So for example, if you have that turned on where the students get texted or whatever based on the assignment coming over, it also shows up in the calendar as well. Okay, and then we've got ways to handle a lot of that stuff. So the integration is largely LTI on the outbound side from Instructure to us, but then we use the Instructure APIs to talk back to it. And that's how this works. And then now for starting this summer and for fall 2017, we implemented what's called a Relink feature. Because as you know, if you took a course in the spring and you had your LMS course linked to a course in our section, a section in our product, they would have unique IDs for those things. But if you copied both of those forward and you joined them back together, you'd have all new IDs. And so that sort of past relationship would break. This tool allows you to realign all that stuff with one click. So when you basically go through the process and then you pair these two things and then you click on Relink, it's going to reassociate those things and update those IDs so they're all relevant again. So you can copy things forward now. So when it gets into the deployment of this, basically our Connect platform is our go-to assessment and learning platform that we allow our instructors to build whatever kind of learning experience they want to. They're aligned to a lot of the products that we sell, largely the textbook type titles. But if you don't want to use the textbook, they do include ebook components, in some cases very powerful ebook components that are also personalized and adaptive, and I can explain what that is later if somebody wants to come to the booth. So we're basically offering a full service solution at this point that covers pretty much any of the needs that you'd have at the institutions. And then I was going to say that at the institution itself, we have 3 different types of support. So we do support our administrators, our integration team. When we work with you, we basically implement the technology. We're going to send you a pretty detailed XML that allows your instructors to drag it from their navigation area onto their course menu, and at that point they're going to be good to go. I'm going to show that in a minute. So administrators get very good support from us, but then we also offer Tier 1 support for all instructors and students that are using these as well. And we have a group that's designed to also help them implement it on the front end if they have questions before they even get started. So once the integration is good to go, we communicate it internally, and then everybody should know on our team on how to help your faculty do that if they have an interest in going into that deep level of integration. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to hop over. I'm in Instructure. So I finally went into the course, and I'm in the instructor context. As I'd mentioned earlier, after the tool is implemented by the administrator, if the faculty member goes to their settings within their course, if they have access to it, in some cases the admin adds these things for the faculty, or they have switches that they could put into the XML to make this available to certain groups of people. Our integration is available at the top account level, the sub-account level, and even at the course level. So it will work at all 3 of those things. Usually when we approach a customer, the first thing they want to do is implement it at the sandbox level, and so they'll do a couple of them at the course level and launch over and see how it works from there. We basically are going to show you here that when we click on settings and we go to the navigation, that it shows up after the XML is implemented. All the faculty have to do is drag that into their course nav, and at that point when they launch it, they're going to be looking at a tool similar to what I had open. And basically in this tool you can do pairing, but then you can also reset your pairings. So you can reset the section pairing, meaning if you attach to the wrong one in our product, you can back out of that and attach to a new one, or even if you attach to the wrong account. We've come across situations where some instructors and or instructional designers have multiple accounts within Canvas depending on what their role is. Some masquerade and do other things, but if they have other roles or other accounts, they can basically reset that as well and rejoin our system. So it's a pretty self-service proposition. After that has happened, other menu options show up. For example, in the middle we have a manual grade sync. This is a part of the reason why we use the Instructure APIs. If, for example, scores get out of alignment for any reason, say there's a disruption or something that occurs somewhere, at any time the faculty can go in to their course and hit manual resync, and it's going to re-update everything. It's going to push all those results from Connect and refresh them back over the top of the existing gradebook columns that are there. I'll see if our endpoint here is working again, so give me a moment. Can you speak up a little bit? Yes. It's very simple. In this sense, what happens is it will basically, when you do the reset, it will basically clear out all the old stuff, and then when you relaunch the tool, all you got to do is back and re-navigate to it, and it'll ask you who you are again. If it's a course or a section, it's just going to ask you to reassociate to the new section. So it's literally like 1 or 2 steps. There's really not much to it.
And then each instructor then has, they'll set up their own, and a lot of times they'll say their own school. So they'll give the rep their school information, and so it's being set up differently. It's not going. They need to connect it back to that. I think we've got it figured out, but is there anything I need to? Yeah, I
get what you're saying. Well, we would normally set the tool up at the sub-account level then, and then
we have to do it at the account because we share classes. We have students from all 7 colleges in a single class being taught by an instructor at one of the colleges.
Well, if we set it up at the top level, though, yeah, that'd be about the only way to do that.
Okay.
To set up at either the course level or the top level.
And that's what we did.
Oh.
We just need to make sure all those colleges, can we make it so all those colleges tie to that top level?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, in terms of the integration, it would just be one key and secret on our side of things.
Yep.
Yeah.
We've already done all that, so.
Here we go. And then if any of you want to see and get talked through more of a detailed presentation of this, we can go and do this at the booth as well later. Just sorry for the inconvenience. But when you go to the navigation, after we set the tool up, we work with you to set it up again at either the top level, the sub-account level, or the individual course level. It's just one XML. You use the XML import option. The person implementing it has to have the ability to enter in or create a learning tool. So if that's locked down at the faculty level, somebody at the administrator or course development level has to be able to do that. Once it's implemented in place, it does show up and it's available in there. It can be dragged onto the navigation. That's the implementation process from that point onward. Then when it gets to the course, there will be a McGraw-Hill Connect item. And when we click on that McGraw-Hill Connect item, and there it is finally rendering. And in here, as I mentioned before, you can do a reset in there once that's set up. But what we're going to do is we're going to launch over to the Connect section. Well, and I'm going to basically walk you through the deployment process, which is pretty simple. Once you're inside of Connect and you've created your exercises and activities, you can identify whether or not they've been deployed to Instructure, to your Canvas course by simply looking at the Canvas icons that are associated to it. If you have an assignment that's not been deployed and you go to our deployment options, it will ask you a couple of questions to begin with. It'll ask you if you want to have either the best or the last or the average attempts recorded for all the assignment activity. That dictates the score that's going to be passed back for that assignment or group of assignments that gets passed back. At which point you click on deploy, and it will be pushing that over to your Canvas assignment list. And you will have an icon for that as well. We have a tab that will take the user back to Canvas, and when they go back over there, they're going to end up back at their control panel for the instructor. Students will largely never see this because students will be within either their modules or their pages or their assignments to begin with. And what that looks like is if you go to the assignments list and you see the things that were deployed or pushed over, they show up in the list. Now, if you're an instructor and you click on the link, as I had mentioned previously, you'll get a tool to launch back over, and you will be in the preview mode for that assignment. So you'll see any of the student activity for that assignment. You'll be able to preview the questions and answers or solutions to it, and you could even drop into an edit mode if it's possible at that time. There are certain conditions where you can't edit because students might have already started taking the assignments and so on. But we have those options available within here. So you can look at your activity and so on. That's what the instructor does when they launch over. When the student launches over, they're actually taking the assignment. When the student takes the assignment, the results will go back into the gradebook automatically when they complete or submit the assignment. So it will actually push those things back for every user that's in there. Now, if there's a discrepancy and it doesn't line up exactly that way, what we can do is go back to the McGraw-Hill Connect tool once that finally loads, and we can resync those scores. And when you hit a manual sync, it will basically push all those results back. It'll ask you if that's really what you want to do, and it'll take everything from Connect and it will reconcile that back into your Canvas course. Now, as I'd mentioned earlier, we have a new feature which is called Relink Assignments, and it may fail here because I clicked on it, but basically what happened was if I would have copied this course to a new course, and I would have copied a new Connect section forward, and I were to pair the two of those together, and I were to use that option, it will basically rejoin all of those assignments, all those fresh assignments in that new section. So if you're moving from the fall term to the spring term, spring to fall, et cetera, it helps you copy those things forward and quickly reassociate all those things that have already been previously deployed, so you don't have to deploy them from term to term. So that's mostly what I was going to show today with the demonstration part of this. If you come by our booth and you want to go through more details, if you want to look at the tool in edit mode and kind of look at the parameters that are being passed across and so on, we can talk through all that as well. I want to thank everybody for coming today. We are running short on time now. Please come by the booth, and if you have any questions, we would certainly like to talk with you about it. And if you would like to implement this with your faculty, the faculty members' first step should be they should reach out to their sales representative. There are forms to allow us to get started working with you. All they have to do is submit that short form, and we will start initiating contact with you immediately. Thank you.